Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Tips for the Transition, the Career Roadmap podcast, and I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, your host. So, my vision for this show is to create resources for women to help them navigate career and life challenges more easily and maybe more gracefully. And so to know that they are not alone. So, with each weekly conversation we have here, we inspire women around the world to become more confident, resilient, and brave in their careers and indeed in their lives. So, if something resonates with you as you're listening, check the show notes below for more information about how to connect with my guest and me. So I often start my podcast with a question. I have a series of them for you right now. Do you think it's possible to have it all, to do it all, and be everything you want to be? Do you think that's possible? I know a lot of women who would say, no, it's not. As professional women, we ask ourselves those questions all the time. And in this episode, I have a special guest for you, Dr. Liz DeFinnis, who is an alignment coach, has successfully balanced multiple roles without compromising her priorities. And we're going to hear more about that. With a PhD in psychology and a master's in occupational therapy, Liz has helped hundreds of professional women align their values, priorities, and vision to live their desired lives. Listen to this, as chief operating officer of a multi seven-figure marketing company, operations manager of an expanding construction company, university professor, and homeschooling mom of three, Liz is a living example of how professional women can be, do, and have it all. So let's dig into it, okay? Hello, Liz. Thanks so
Hello.
much for joining us.
Yes, I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I know a lot of women who want to hear from you like real quick. So let's just jump into it. You are one busy lady, Liz. And I honestly, I can't wait to hear how you do all of that and still have a beautiful smile on your face. You look really well rested and you have time to be on our podcast today. So clearly you wear many hats. I think many of us do. So let's just peel it back a little bit. Give us a little bit of the backstory. What did you do before this entrepreneurial venture and what led you to where you are today?
Yeah, so before all of this, I was an occupational therapist primarily. I had gone back to school to earn my PhD, but I was working primarily as an occupational therapist. I worked in a lot of different aspects of OT. So I've had experience working in rehab hospitals. I've also taught at universities full time. And one of my favorite things with OT was working in home health. So I really enjoyed working in home health. I loved having that one-on-one time with my patients, and being able to work with them in their own home was really special because that's where we live, right? That's where our life happens. And so as an OT, really getting in there and getting to know my patients was important to me. And so I did that for many years. I graduated back in 2009. So I did it for about 12 years. And in 2020 is when I shifted over and started more in the entrepreneurship bucket, so to say, of my career. And so it's been about 3 years. It'll be 3 years this year of when I first launched my very first business and wrote my first book and went down that path of entrepreneurship.
Okay, so 3 years under your belt, you've
Yeah.
already written a book. Many people wonder how'd you do that. But I want to know. So, in the intro, I explained some of the roles you are involved in. How do you show up for those various roles without sacrificing your values, your priorities, yourself?
Yeah. And it's so important because really, and this is something I really stand for, is how can you really do things if you are sacrificing yourself? What's the point, right? So it's so important to have awareness of who you really are, what those values are that are so important to you, and being able to look at the priorities of the season of life that you're in. And we all experience different seasons. So back in 2020, my season was that I had just had a newborn baby. She had some medical complications, and I had two little boys. And we were, heading into that season of, dealing with a lot of medical things in the world. And during that time, during that transition for me, it was really being able to say, okay, like this is a season of my life. And when you have an infant, it's a season all in itself. And looking at priorities means being able to assess our life in the seasons that we're in and being able to look at where we're at and what requires more or less attention. Never losing sight of what our values are, the things that make us who we really are, what's most important to us, our core components, and also our vision for where we really want to go, where it is that we're heading, and being aware of what it's really going to take to get there, which is something that I think it took me a little bit of time as well. And this is any clients that I do work with, my clients, I find this is the piece that we often are missing, is that real connection with where it is we want to go and what it's going to take. And when we can identify those pieces and align the values and priorities and the vision of where we want to go, we don't have to sacrifice because we make decisions from a place of alignment between the three. And so that was a big part of what helped me get to from where I was to where I am today, and being able to help others do the same.
So what I hear you saying is that you can be, do, and have it all, but not necessarily all in the same season or all at the same time. You talk about prioritized alignment. You didn't use that phrase exactly a moment ago, but you alluded to it. And I've heard you talk about that before. So let's talk about that. Prioritized alignment. What is it? And how does it lead us to being able to have it all?
Yeah. And so I think one of the big topics that definitely has to be talked about in this realm is the feeling of guilt. Because this is what kind of comes into play when we wear many hats, when we fulfill many different roles. Something common in the world of being a mom that comes up is mom guilt. But this is true for anybody in any sort of, whether they are a mom or not, where when we're giving to one aspect, we feel like we are taking from something else. And so being able to be in that space of prioritized alignment means being able to truly know, as I mentioned before, what your values are, what your vision is for where you want to go, and being able to prioritize alignment between each of those things along the way. And part of that means really just being aware of how you're thinking and feeling every day. And when those feelings of guilt do come in, it's not that it's a perfect world, right? And so you see these conversations out there, and people talk about affirmations, and we get into that space where it's a lot of like toxic positivity. It's like, well, you can do it all, and just like getting into that space of thinking like it's all going to be great and you'll feel wonderful. But if you don't have the tools that you need to really feel great in the process, doing it all is not going to feel good. Doing it all is going to feel like pressure. It's going to feel like stress. It's going to feel not like you're succeeding at everything, but rather that you feel like you're giving up everything. Like you're trying to give over here to your family, but you're taking it from your career, and you're putting that burden on coworkers, or on, it's coming out in the revenue of a business. But really what this comes down to is being able to recognize what matters most to you and being able to make the choices along the way that lead to that. And that only comes from the place of setting yourself up for success and having those alignment tools in your belt, so that when the guilt does come in, because it's always going to, it's never perfection. It's always going to be that you get to feel your feelings in the process. But part of being able to be a part of different things and feel not be successful, but feel successful in the things that you're doing, it all comes from a place of really being aware of how you are thinking and feeling and having the tools to be able to create what it is that you want to create those feelings that you want to feel.
Okay, so you covered a lot there. I think I want to get back to the guilt piece. I want to stick with the values piece for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I work with values and vision a lot with my clients as well. Let's talk about the values. What's important to you now, right? Because values can shift and change as the seasons change. And a lot of people think about values as these, the core values you were raised with, and they should never change. I don't believe that's true. What do you think about that?
So I think it depends on how you look at values for sure. And I think that, one of the things that I really stand behind is the fact that perspective is everything. And our perspective, it impacts the way that we view the world. And it means that there's always more to learn. There's always new ways to look at things. And so I think that that's important to kind of lead into what I'm going to say. And when I look at values, I don't look at them as changing. However, I don't look at values coming from the way that we were brought up or those pieces. When I think about values, I look at it as if we took off all of our labels. So for me, because I know me, it's a great example for me to use. If I wasn't a mom and, I wasn't an operations manager, and I didn't own my own business, and I wasn't an entrepreneur, and I didn't have a Ph.D, and I, wasn't an occupational therapist, and I wasn't a college professor, and I wasn't a wife, and I wasn't a daughter or a sister or any of the other roles that I have in my life. If I wasn't any of those things and I took off all of the labels, who am I underneath everything? How would I show up in the world? Who would I be? And this is a really silly example of how I go through this with some clients, but it's like in a zombie apocalypse, right? Where the whole world goes crazy and nobody knows who you are. And it doesn't matter how you dress or what kind of job you have or how much money you make, what college degree you have. None of that matters. If you didn't have any of the people that that know you for who you are, right? For who you have been in your life, and you were just setting out in the world where nobody knew you, who would you be then? And to me, that person without all the labels is what makes up the values of how you show up in the life that you live. So it's similar in that the way that you show your values in the world might shift, but I don't really feel that values they're not even touched by the way we're brought up. But societal impacts do change the way we tend to feel we need to show up, because we always have. And that comes from who we are and the roles we fulfilled.
Okay. All right. But because of the role, so the zombie apocalypse isn't happening anytime soon.
No.
And I know that it's really difficult to shed the roles, the labels, right?
Yeah.
That we use to describe who we are. So I love what you just did. If we peel away all of the labels, who are we at the core?
Yeah.
And how do we, like you say, how do we show up so that other people know who we are? So give us an example for yourself. When you peel all your roles back, because you've got a lot of them, most of us do. What are those core values for you?
Yeah. So one of the big ones for me is, really showing up and doing the things that I say I'm going to do. I find it, I used to, and this is an example of where like that perspective of values shifting or not shifting, right? I used to view this as being like hardworking. I used to view it as like, I'm a hard worker, but really hard worker is a label that I've put on myself. Really who I am at the core is somebody who does what they say they're going to do. If I say I'm going
Having
to work
integrity.
hard, I work hard, right? So it's all based on what I say I'm going to do and coming up and showing in that space. And so, yes, I do think that our values we believe our values can change and shift. And that mostly comes from the fact that we grow and shift as people. And so what we think
That's
our
right.
value was, we sometimes don't have full awareness of our values because we're always changing as people and developing more self-awareness of who we are and who we want to be in that process.
True. Absolutely true. When I say our values shift and change, that's you just nailed it. It is because we do. So as our seasons evolve, and for me, for example, family was always very important in my life, very high up there. But I came into a season of life where I became a caregiver for a member of my family, for my husband, in fact. And family first became my first value. That was a shift
Yeah.
for me. That value, it just became a higher priority.
Yeah.
So the yeah, so I think we're both saying the same thing. I just want to make it clear for our listeners that so that they have just an idea of what you're saying with regard to prioritized alignment with your values. So let's talk more about let's talk about the guilt. I want to get back to that for a moment. There,
Yeah.
you're so right. Guilt is one of the most wasted emotions that we have because it really can take us down a rabbit hole if we let it. But I
Yeah.
love the way you said it, that you just acknowledge that you're feeling a little guilty that you're working right now and not being with one of your kids,
Yeah.
or being with your kids and not working. But what you said is you have integrity always. So what you said you would do in any role will get done.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, guilt, like you said, I mean, it can take you down fast. And
Yeah.
when we make decisions from a place of guilt, we are not making decisions that are really getting us to where we want to be. If we think
Yeah.
about our vision, where we want to go and who we want to become and all of those pieces, those bigger kind of dreamy feeling pieces, likely guilt is nowhere in that picture. Likely guilt is not the piece that we want to be in the forefront of it. Does that mean that guilt won't be there? It'll always be there.
Yeah.
All feelings are all going to be there all the time. And so there's no good feelings or bad feelings or any of those things. But we do get to make decisions from a place of how we want to think and feel. And so if your desired vision is to feel guilty, then making decisions from a place of guilt will be fine. But if we're making decisions out of guilt, and
I
that's
hope
not
no
really
one
who
is
we want to
feeling
be.
that.
I hope not.
I hope no one is thinking that, saying that. No, no, no. We don't want that.
But when we make decisions from who we do want to be, how we do want to feel, it makes it a lot easier. And I hear this a lot from my clients that it's hard to make decisions. Making decisions
Mhm.
is challenging. And prioritized alignment allows for decision making to be simple, because when you're very aware of your values and you're very aware of your priorities, it becomes simple to be able to make the choices that align with getting to where you want to be with that vision, not ignoring the feelings along the way, acknowledging, okay, I'm feeling guilty that, the last 2 weeks I've definitely worked more than I had the 2 weeks before that. But back in December, I took off almost an entire month of a lot of what I do to take my kids on a trip to Universal and to enjoy the holiday season and to pack up our entire life and move across the country. And so it's okay that now I might be dedicating a little bit more time to my work roles. And so it's being able to see those pieces and acknowledge that, like, I might feel guilty now, but logic helps soothe all of those feelings that are going on.
But you're making those choices consciously,
Yes.
right? And deliberately. You're
Yes.
saying, all right, I'm going to give myself this break. We've got a big project. We got to make the move.
Yeah.
Want to, enjoy the holidays with the kids, want the kids to have fun. So for that, I will, in the future, give up some time to make this happen. That's a conscious choice.
Yeah,
There's no reason to feel guilty about that. And
exactly.
it's all, it's all in communication with the people in your lives, right? We're
Yeah.
going to get to go do this now, but I want you to know that come January and February and March, it's going to mean that I got to put a little more time into these other things. So are you okay with that? And everybody's on board, right? Because of course they want to go have fun.
Yes. That's exactly it. These are intentional choices that are made. And this is where we can shift the mindset of decisions are hard, because decisions are only hard when you're making them blindly without any sort of
Right.
reason behind the decision. But when you can look at the choices that are made and you understand why you're making those choices, it all becomes a lot more easier to communicate, easier to set boundaries, easier to honor boundaries, and soothe the feelings that come with that. For me, my feeling is guilt. And I know for a lot of people it is, but it's not guilt for everybody. It can be different feelings, but we all can recognize when we have that little jab of a feeling and we're like, oh, like that's not desired, right? Like that's not a desirable thing to feel right now. And then being able to ask yourself those questions of what is that really about? If I'm feeling guilty today, okay, like what is that guilt really about? And then what can I do to soothe that? And so it's very simple. This morning it snowed here last night, and we do a fun thing where we make snow sodas. And it was only 8 a.m, but yes, I let the kids have soda and we made our snow sodas because I knew that my husband would shovel and we wouldn't be able to do it later today. And so I knew that I wanted to spend that 45 minutes really being with them, doing that activity. And so it allowed me to recognize that, prioritize that. And then I go into my day where I have lots of meetings and get to do this fun interview. And I get to feel good about how I showed up as a mom already today before going into all of the tasks where I get to feel great implementing those tasks as well.
You talked about decisions being hard and how to make them easier. I think when you think about prioritized alignment, that's one way of doing it. Another way, I think, is by using the values that you say are most important to you as a kind of a checklist for every decision you have to make, and asking yourself, does this decision align with, honor my values of integrity, freedom, family first, whatever they are for you? And if the answer is yes, it is almost always a good decision given the information you have at the time.
Yeah, that last part is really key too, right?
Yeah,
Because when we think about, we don't always know that the decisions that we're going to make
no,
are going to be perfect. And that's the thing that keeps people in action, where they
that's
don't
right.
go after those big dreams, visions, goals that they have, because it's like, well, how do I know? I mean, when we
Yeah,
move,
and the answer is you don't,
right?
right?
Right.
How do I
We have
know
no
that
idea,
in the long haul this
right?
will be a good decision? Well, you don't. But is it a good decision for you today based on what you know? Well, yeah, it feels like it would be. So go for it. You can decide something. It doesn't have to be the last decision you ever make. It likely won't be.
Mm-mm. You can
Yeah.
always choose differently later, reflect and refine in that process. We've made a lot of big moves in our life, a lot of big changes, and we never know. We never know how it's going to work out, but we make the decision, and then later on, it never feels like it didn't work out. And I think that's key. Like we've done a lot of moving in the past couple of years, and we moved from Florida to North Carolina, and we didn't stay in North Carolina, but that doesn't mean the 2 years that we spent there weren't valuable, that we
Right.
didn't, grow as a family, that we didn't learn new things, that we didn't grow as human beings in the house that we were in. And we did. And now we moved to Nevada, which was a huge move. And again, we don't know if we're going to love it. We do right
Mhm.
now, but
Yeah.
that can change. And then we can just make a different choice along the way. And so it's like, no choice is ever the end all be all. There's always freedom to choose again, to choose differently. But if you don't make a choice and you stay where you are and you keep doing the same thing every day, and you're not happy with the things that you have right now, right? You want to make some choices to change, right? If you're looking for change in your life, it requires that you do something different to create that different outcome.
Right. That's right. And then, if you do not make the decision and you stay where you are, then that other ugly emotion comes up, and that's called regret.
Yeah. Regrets.
So, guilt and regret are
Challenging.
two emotions that we just really don't, they're not great. They're not our great, they're our lowest vibrational emotions on the spectrum. And no, who wants to be there? Yeah. So all right. So let's get back to you and all these roles that you fill. Tell us the truth. Does it ever get overwhelming for you to keep up with all of those different demands?
Two things to that. I would say yes, and also that overwhelm is a choice. And so a coach that I worked with a while back had said, overwhelm's a choice. And the first time I heard that, I was like, it hurt. It hurt.
I
It hurt my
love that.
feelings.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it's true. So anytime I do feel overwhelmed with the roles that I fulfill, I can look at the overwhelm and I can say, no, I don't want to choose this. I want to choose differently. And so then I look at all the things that are going on, all the roles that I'm fulfilling, the tasks that need to get done. And I say to myself, okay, what is it that's really going on here? And where's the solution to feeling the overwhelm? Because if I'm choosing overwhelm, it also means that I can choose to find a solution as well. And so the answer is yes. I think that to say no is going into that realm again of toxic positivity. Like, are there challenges in life? Yes. Are there solutions for the challenges that we face? Absolutely. When we're willing to see them, when we're willing to acknowledge that they exist and then take action on them.
You just reminded me of something I heard. First of all, I want to say I love what your coach taught you. Overwhelm is a choice. That is I'm going to write that down because I think there's an article in that for me. It's a great premise.
Yeah.
It also reminds me about something I heard recently. And it's when you look for the solution, it brings the positive energy in instead of sitting in the problem.
Yeah.
And overwhelm, I think, is sitting in a bunch of problems, right? Because there are things that are overtaking you, or so it feels.
Yeah.
But if overwhelm is a choice and you get to look at what are the things that are kind of piling up on you that are making you feel overwhelmed, and you kind of analyze them, prioritize them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sit in the solution for them and
Yeah.
prioritize that, then the overwhelm really goes away.
Yeah, absolutely. And my coach, Nicole Haas, when she had first said that to me, I was resistant, because most of the time we're resistant to the thing we really need to hear the most, right?
Sure.
We really need to hear that. And so you're like, no, that's not it. It's like, but it is it. And the truth is, when we align ourselves with whatever feeling we're aligning ourselves with, any feeling at all, if it's overwhelm, if it's joy, if it's success, if it's whatever feeling we want to create within ourselves, when we align that and we start to feel it every day, we welcome things into our life that are going to support continuing to feel that way. So if we're aligning with feelings of joy and success and pride in ourselves and things like that, we welcome things into our lives that support that feeling. However, if we're allowing ourselves to sit in that feeling of overwhelm, or being anxious, or chaos is a big one. I hear this a lot, where like, I just have all the chaos, like it just keeps happening to me, right? It's like these things keep happening to me. And it's like, but really They're happening for you because you've aligned yourself with continuing to be in that energetic frequency of saying, I'm okay with chaos. But when you start to shift and look at solutions, you're recognizing that, oh, there's solutions here, and you start to align in the solution-oriented mindset, more solutions will appear. It's like when you buy a white car and then you see all the white cars on the road, you see them because you're in the frequency of, hey, I just bought a white car and now I can see the white cars. It's the same thing with looking for solutions versus allowing chaos in your life.
Right. Oh, aligning with chaos. That just felt really yucky to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of that out there, you know,
Yeah,
because
there, you know
there's a lot
what?
of
You're
people.
so right. You are so right. All right. So you talk a lot about being able to be, do, and have it all. Tell us really, bottom line, what does that really mean? And how can someone kind of begin to take steps, break it down for us to make that possible for them?
So typically, when we think about, I want to have it all, we're looking at things from that point of view of where do I want to go? What are my goals? What am I looking to achieve in my life? And instantly, if we want to have all of those things, we're like, okay, what do I need to do to create it? But doing is not the first step. And that's the part that most people miss in this process. Being is the part that needs to come first. That means connecting with yourself, it means being your truest self. It means really getting to know your values and who you are as a person, how you feel, and how you approach things in life, and understanding more about yourself so that when you do things, you bring the sense of being you into what you do. That is naturally going to allow for the things that you do to just make more sense, to feel better, to feel more aligned, to be easier, for you to be able to do things in a state of flow. And so there's a book out there called Flow. I absolutely love this book. It is phenomenal. I'm not going to try to say the author's name because it has lots of letters. It's very intense to say, and I don't want to say it incorrectly. But if you Google the book Flow, you will definitely find this book. It will pop up. I first read this book back in college as a part of my OT degree. And it was learning about being able to help our patients get into a state of flow when they were doing an activity. An example of this and how this benefits our patients as an OT is that when one discipline is working on how long a patient can stand after having knee surgery, and they're just having them stand, and the patient can stand for, let's say, 30 seconds. And then the patient comes to me in occupational therapy and I work with them. And while they're standing, I have them do a puzzle, right? So I put a puzzle out and they're working on the puzzle. And while they're working on the puzzle, they're standing, and they stand for 4 minutes, which is significantly longer. That comes because they were in a state of flow. They forgot that they were uncomfortable. They forgot that they might have been having some uncomfortable pain from the surgery while they were standing. And suddenly, in the state of flow, they were able to do so much better on being able to improve their tolerance for standing, which ultimately matters because that's how they're going to be able to get around their house, get dressed, get back to work if that's an occupation that they fulfill. And so it's being able to see that by giving people meaningful occupations, meaningful things to do with their hands, it will also impact other areas of their life. So when we can bring a sense of flow into everything that we do, when we be first, and then we bring that being energy of flow into what we do, it allows and sets the stage for us to have everything that we want and to feel good about it. Because having things is never going to be the goal. It's going to be how you want to feel while you have the things that you desire to have. It's about feeling success, not being successful. Feeling success is being first so that you can have the things that society tends to dictate as success, which is usually money and status and houses and different things like that. But it really comes from a place of within of being first.
And when you get to that place, you get to decide what success looks like for you.
Yeah.
And society be damned, right? It really, those are the expectations, the shoulds that we get to reevaluate for ourselves when we really spend the time to go within and figure out, who are we really? Who are we? Who do we want to become?
Yeah.
And then what do we want to do? So I love that you put it in that order. I think that you're absolutely right. I experience this with my clients all the time. When I'm working with people as a career coach, they want to jump right into looking for the job,
Yeah.
looking at job descriptions and saying, I can do that, do that, do that, do that, do. And the question I ask is, but do you want to? Well, why wouldn't I? I know how to do all that. But what do you want to be?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you want differently than what you have? And that requires that inner discovery work that we do with our clients first.
Yeah. And that brings up that thing. I always say that there's two questions that I ask my clients that you would think should being very key there, be the easiest questions to answer. But the one that is most challenging for many people is, who are you really, right? Going back, peeling off all those layers, who are you really underneath the labels and the layers that we have? And what do you really want? Because when we really get down to it, not many times in our lives, when we're growing up and we're choosing a career and where we're going to go, are we ever really asked, what do you want? It's more about how much money we're going to make, how many years of schooling it's going to require, how much the schooling is going to cost. And we get into all of these thoughts of calculating and doing energy rather than, who are you and what do you want? Because those pieces make up the being component that is ultimately going to make whatever you do feel amazing. It doesn't really matter what you do. It's how you do it, and how comes from the being part first.
And how it fulfills you.
Yeah.
So you and I both ask our clients very similar questions. Mine are, who are you now? And what I mean by that is, because I'm a transition coach, who are you now that things have changed, right? How are you shifting and evolving? What do you care about most now? And what do you want?
Yeah.
In that order,
Yeah.
because you
So
can't jump to the end without successfully, I think. You can't really get the doing part done and feel good about it, feel fulfilled by it, if you don't really know who you are to start.
yeah, and I think it's important to note that we naturally jump to doing because it feels good. It feels like we're doing something. It feels scary to know that we're in a transition and changes are happening when they may not be by choice. A lot of times changes are
Yep.
happening and it's not by choice. And so it's scary to be in that space and think like, okay, but I got to do something to make sure. And it's really about trying to control the outcomes. And so many times it's surrendering, it's allowing, it's connecting more with yourself first before jumping in and taking action, because the actions that you take will be so much more aligned with where it is that you want to go and the outcome that you do desire to have, if you can do this part first. But it does feel scary. It feels counterintuitive to sit back and allow things when the world feels like it's spinning out of control and you're
Yeah.
not controlling it the way you want it to.
Yeah. You're right. It is scary. And stopping the swirl is a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to be less overwhelmed by it. But I think some of your insights that you've shared already today should help others who might feel that sense of overwhelm and lack of control. Just break it apart
Yeah.
and look for the solutions. And first, know who you are and what it is you really want. Yeah. All right. So tell us, what's next in line for you? You are an evolving woman. So what's the next version of your vision that's coming up for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is ever evolving, and it's growing in the ways. And this is what I love about visions, is that we can set our visions and we have an idea of what we think it's going to look like. But when I do vision work, it's very much about the feelings that I desire to have, because what I have found is most of the things that I'm doing now that I love, that really, really align with who I am and how I really want my days to look and feel, really came from a place of connecting with the feelings that I desire to have. And so I wear a lot of hats, do a lot of things. And one of the things that I'm doing right now that is new and upcoming is I'm running a beta program where I am working with in the multi-million-dollar company that I work with. I am launching a new beta version with the team itself. And what we're doing in this beta is looking at my program that I run with individual clients. I'm taking that program. It's called Path to the Aligned Soul. We take that program and we're implementing it from a business standpoint. So it's allowing the team to answer these questions, very similar to what we've talked about today. Look and answer these questions of, who are they and what do they really want and what are their values and priorities, and how are they setting themselves up for success and aligning with that futuristic vision. And taking that individual part, allowing each member of the team to feel seen and heard, to recognize and feel that they are valued. And then we're taking the program and we're applying it in the business sense. And so it's a much bigger vision. And this is helping the team be able to see the alignment between their individualness and who they are and what they want, what their vision is, where they want to go, and also being able to understand and grasp that bigger vision of the business itself. And then in that line, be able to see how there's alignment between what they want and what the business is heading down the road for, because we're becoming as people, but our business is us in every way. And so a business is also as good as its team. And so we are really layering in that piece of filling up the team and helping them value themselves so that they can see the value that they hold within the business as well.
I love that you're doing that, because it also shows how individual contributors
Yes.
make a mark on the team, ultimately on the corporation itself as well. And I would imagine when this work is done, you will be building, developing much more cohesive, collaborative teams than they had before, which is always a good thing in a corporate environment.
Yes, it's definitely, it's been really amazing watching it roll out. So we are currently in week 4 of the 6-week training. And so these last 2 weeks, they're the weeks where like all the sparkles come in and you really see the magic start to happen. And so it's been incredible watching that. And I know that, that's the direction that's going to go. Is yes, I will still continue to be working with individuals, and I will still continue to work in Wonder World marketing and doing all the operations components of that, but also being able to bring this into other avenues and do consulting with other businesses and be able to help businesses see how valuing their staff or employees or contractors, whatever the setup is for them, how the value of them and getting them to value themselves will completely change the trajectory of that business and the alignment pieces that lead to success.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great project. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
All right, so we've come to the end of our conversation here, but I can't let you go yet, because we always wrap up with my guests sharing like their best takeaways, their best tips with the audience. So let's talk about yours. What's your first one, Liz?
I think, the biggest tip is to learn to trust the voice that you already have inside. Part of that process of being and then doing and then having is being first. And being comes from a place of listening to yourself. So listen, the voice is there. If you're willing to listen to it, it's giving you the nudges. It's helping you make the decisions that feel challenging in the moment. Go for it. Go for it always.
And sometimes that voice is not terribly kind, and we have to learn how to lower the volume on the self-talk that's not very kind, and listen to the voice from the heart is what I call it. But yeah, that's a great tip. Not easy, not always easy to do, but it's a great tip. So what's your second one, Liz?
My second tip is to, really, if you're in that space and mentioning self-talk, if you're in that space and you're having a little bit of trouble pulling apart the pieces, I highly, highly recommend allowing yourself the space to connect more with you in that process. And so I want to say, hire a coach to help you, but that's not really the answer in this. But I do want you to bring awareness to the fact that sometimes the people around you, and that whole saying of, your mindset being made up of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, look at who you're spending your time with and recognize the impact that they're having on how you're thinking and how you're feeling, and if it aligns with how you want to feel. And it's not that you don't spend time with them, but you get to bring more awareness to the thoughts and the feelings that you're having, because a lot of times that self-talk is being fueled from that. So if you're listening to yourself and you're saying either I'm not hearing anything or I don't like the things that I'm hearing, recognize that there's solutions to that. And it really just comes from allowing yourself more time with you and stepping outside of any sort of situation or environment that might be fueling the fire of not feeling the way that you want to feel.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if you're noticing that the people around you are not saying supportive things, they're not fueling you, I like the way you described that. Seek people who do. Seek
Yeah.
people who believe in you, have your back. It's what I call your personal board of directors. When you surround yourself with people who lift you up, support you in what you believe in, who you are and what you do, then you'll start to hear the better voices in your head, and you'll be able to hear your own.
Yeah,
That's great.
absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, what's your third one?
My third one is really just go for it. Go for whatever the thing is, the scary big dream. Look at what the what ifs are. What are you afraid of? Don't be afraid to look at what you're afraid of, because the truth is the answer to getting to where you want to go, to being who you want to be, to having those dreams come true, it comes from a place of saying, I want to do this, but what if, right? Getting into the what ifs is exactly what's going to help you get there. Don't be afraid to look at them. A lot of times we want to hide from the what ifs. We're like, well, if I think like that, it'll come true. But that's not true, because you're already feeling it on the inside. And so allowing your feelings to flow, allowing yourself to feel those feelings, let them out, to answer those what ifs for yourself, fill in the blank. Really, at the end of the day, we're very much afraid of the unknown. We keep ourselves away from making those big, scary decisions that we want to make to go after our big, scary dreams that are there,
Yeah.
because we're afraid of what are the things that we can't see now. What if it doesn't go like we planned and something unknown happens? Answer those questions for yourself. Look at them and say, I know I'll know what to do, because I will continue to take action in the way that makes the most sense in the moment. And as you had said it before, I'm going to make a decision from the information that I have right now, and it will always be okay. So always go for it. Just jump in
You
and
will,
go.
you'll never fail. You'll always learn,
Yes.
right? So you remind me of something a mentor of mine always says when there's a tough decision to make, and you say go for it. But what if the worst happens? Her response to that is, so what?
Mm-hmm.
What will you learn from it that will make the next attempt
Yep.
even better, and probably more than you ever imagined?
Yep.
So yeah, it's getting away from ourselves as our own worst enemy, right?
Yeah. Getting
Yeah,
out of your own way is
getting
that
out of your own way.
saying
Yeah,
that's out there. And I gotta say, my
exactly.
3-year-old daughter, she says it best all the time. She'll go, "Let's do this." And she's just ready to jump in, and it's connecting with that inner 3-year-old, and just going all in and not allowing those big what if fears to hold you back.
Oh, if only we could all revert to our childhood when we need it. That would be such a gift if we
Yeah.
could. We there would be a lot more daredevils in the world.
Yes.
Liz, thank you so much for sharing all your insights and your tips here today. I really appreciate your being here. I know that a lot of people are going to want to reach out and learn more about you and probably connect and say, okay, teach me how to do it all. So what is the one best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is on the website. So it is just lizdeffinnis.com. So just my name. And there's an opt-in form there that you can just fill out, contact me, and I'll get your email. And there's lots of great tips on there, lots of opportunities to be able to fill your cup and do it in a way that feels good to you.
That's great. I appreciate your being here so much, Liz. Thank you again.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And for those who are watching, or listening, I really appreciate that you're a part of this community. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe or leave a comment or click a star rating if there is one where you are. Let us know what you liked about it. So, as I said at the top of the show, I love creating and sharing resources for women. Plus, as a career and life coach, I work with women to help them navigate challenging times more quickly and more gracefully. So, if something in this episode resonates, you'd like a fresh perspective, let's have a conversation about it. All the links to reach Liz or me are in the show notes below. And I invite you to continue this conversation on my private Facebook group called the Career Transition Roadmap. So, again, the link for that is below as well. So, let's meet again here next Wednesday, same time, same station, as they say. Because you know what? I believe it's time to thrive. So, let's thrive together. Till next time, I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, helping you turn transition into triumph.